Lesson 44, Speed and Comfort. We'll talk about different forms of travel in this text. Which type of transport does the author prefer? First, listen to the text and then answer this question. 你觉得作者最喜欢哪种交通方式？
People traveling long distances frequently have to decide whether they would prefer to go by land, sea, or air. Hardly anyone can positively enjoy sitting in a train for more than a few hours. Train compartments soon get cramped and stuffy. It is almost impossible to take your mind off the journey. Reading is only a partial solution, for the monotonous rhythm of the wheels clicking on the rails soon lulls you to sleep. During the day, sleep comes in snatches. At night, when you really wish to go to sleep, you rarely manage to do so. If you are lucky enough to get a sleeper, you spend half the night staring at the small blue light in the ceiling, or fumbling to find your ticket for inspection. Inevitably, you arrive at your destination almost exhausted. Long car journeys are even less pleasant, for it is quite impossible even to read. On motorways you can, at least, travel fairly safely at high speeds, but more often than not, the greater part of the journey is spent on roads with few service stations and too much traffic. By comparison, ferry trips or cruises offer a great variety of civilized comforts. You can stretch your legs on the spacious decks, play games, meet interesting people, and enjoy good food, always assuming, of course, that the sea is calm. If it is not, and you are likely to get seasick, no form of transport could be worse. Even if you travel in ideal weather, sea journeys take a long time. Relatively few people are prepared to sacrifice holiday time for the pleasure of traveling by sea. Aeroplanes have the reputation of being dangerous, and even hardened travelers are intimidated by them. They also have the disadvantage of being an expensive form of transport. But nothing can match them for speed and comfort. Traveling at a height of 30,000 feet, far above the clouds, and at over 500 miles an hour is an exhilarating experience. You do not have to devise ways of taking your mind off the journey, for an aeroplane gets you to your destination rapidly. For a few hours, you settle back in a deep armchair to enjoy the flight. The real escapist can watch a film and sip champagne on some services. But even when such refinements are not available, there is plenty to keep you occupied. An aeroplane offers you an unusual and breathtaking view of the world. You soar effortlessly over high mountains and deep valleys. You really see the shape of the land. If the landscape is hidden from view, you can enjoy the extraordinary sight of unbroken cloud plains that stretch out for miles before you, while the sun shines brilliantly in a clear sky. The journey is so smooth that there is nothing to prevent you from reading or sleeping. However you decide to spend your time, one thing is certain: you will arrive at your destination fresh and uncrumpled. You will not have to spend the next few days recovering from a long and arduous journey.
So which type of transport does the author prefer? Right, he prefers flying. What about you? This text talks about different transport means. The first paragraph talks about all transport means but flying. Trains, cars, and ships all have their disadvantages that cannot be overcome. And the second paragraph focuses on planes. It starts with two disadvantages, danger and expense. But then it continues with advantages, speed and comfort. But the author insists that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Finally, he makes a conclusion, which is, whichever transport means you choose, you need to arrive at your destination in good shape. Okay, now let's look at some language points. Prefer to go by land, by sea, or air. It's a different ways of expressing transport means. It means the same as by train, by ship, and by plane. Hardly anyone can positively enjoy sitting in a train for more than a few hours. Hardly 这里放在句首，但是整个句子并没有倒装，是因为它是用来形容主语 anyone 的。Hardly anyone can positively enjoy. Positively is used to emphasize enjoy. I'll give you more examples about how to use positively. The waitress was positively rude to us. Here, positively is also used to emphasize rude. It means she was completely rude to us. He said quite positively that he would come. Here, positively means certainly or definitely. 他说得很肯定他会来。The teacher spoke positively about the work he had done. Here, positively means favorably, 就是称赞了他做的事情。Reading is only a partial solution. Partial means not complete. Look at this example. The patient may only make a partial recovery. 可能只能部分痊愈。But in this sentence, a newspaper made an entirely partial report on the conflict. Partial here means unfair, 就是有倾向性的、偏向的。Lulls you to sleep. It means makes it easier for you to fall asleep. Lull 还可以在 lull into 这个词组中使用。It means to cause into a kind of misconception. For example, the minister's talk lulled the public into believing that the situation was improving. 这个部长的谈话呢，使得公众错误地相信情形改善了。Fumbling to find your ticket for inspection. Fumble, 乱翻的。For example, he fumbled in his pockets for his keys. 他在口袋里翻着钥匙。Or, the speaker was so nervous that he fumbled with his notes and dropped them. Fumble with his notes 就是乱翻着他的讲稿。He fumbled for the right word to say how sorry he was. Fumbled for the right word means desperately looking for the right word. You arrive at your destination almost exhausted. Exhausted means completely tired or tired out, 累坏了。For example, I'm exhausted by a full day's teaching. 教了一天的课，我累坏了。It can also mean to use up. For example, his patience was soon exhausted by the monotony of the job. 他的耐心很快被工作的单调性耗光了。On motorways, motorway 高速公路，英国人常用 motorway， 美国人常用 highway。More often than not, the greater part of the journey is spent on roads with few service stations and too much traffic. More often than not, sometimes as often as not. It means most times. I'll give you an example. Behind many successful men, there is, more often than not, a woman who makes this success possible. 很多成功的男人背后，通常都有一个支持他的女人。By comparison, ferry trips or cruises offer a great variety. By comparison 这个词组的意思是相比之下。Look at more examples. My problems are almost nothing by comparison. 如果要和什么东西比较，就可以加上 with yours。这个时候 by 也可以换成 in。和你的问题相比，我的问题算不了什么。The UK is tiny by or in comparison with the US. 和美国相比，英国只是弹丸之地。Civilized comforts. Civilized 的本意是文明的。For example, a civilized society. Or, let's talk about it like civilized people means let's be polite to each other. But here, civilized comforts. Civilized means pleasant, 适宜的。Look at this example. She thinks that afternoon tea is a very civilized tradition. 一个非常宜人的习惯。You can stretch your legs on the spacious decks. To stretch one's legs means to go for a walk, especially after sitting for a long time. 活动一下。For example, we drove there in 4 hours, including a few stops to stretch our legs. 我们停了几次来活动一下。Always assuming that the sea is calm. Assuming that means on the condition that, or provided that. 前提是 For example, assuming that your application is accepted, are you going to quit the present job? 如果你的申请被接受了，你会辞职吗？ Relatively few people. 几乎没有什么人。Relatively is often used to qualify these adjectives. Relatively little, relatively cheap, or relatively easy. For example, there is relatively little violence in his new film. 他的新电影中相对来讲几乎没有什么暴力。Few people are prepared to sacrifice holiday time for the pleasure. Be prepared to do something means be willing to do something. For example, people are not really prepared to talk about this kind of personal problems, which means they are reluctant to talk about such things. Have the reputation of being dangerous. Reputation means fame. Here refers to the bad fame. But look at this example, where it refers to good fame. The company has a worldwide reputation of quality. 公司在全球以质量著名。Travelers are intimidated by them. Intimidated means be made timid by, or be frightened by. For example, she was intimidated by the formal atmosphere of the party. 晚会的正式气氛令她觉得紧张。Many people find interview situations intimidating. 很多人觉得面试的情景让人紧张。You settle back in a deep armchair. Settle means to make yourself comfortable. Look at more examples. Settle down on the sofa and I'll bring you a cup of coffee. Means make yourself comfortable on the sofa. He settled in front of the television, or he settled himself in front of the television after dinner. 吃完晚饭后，他在电视前舒舒服服地坐下。The real escapist. Escapist means somebody who escapes from reality. 逃避现实的人。But here it refers to the person who escapes from the journey or the monotonous trip. Sip means to drink in a small amount. 小口的啜饮。For example, the tea is very hot, so sip it slowly. On some services. Service here means a particular journey on a particular means of transport. For example, there is a train service to London every 30 minutes. 每隔30分钟会有一班火车到伦敦。Such refinements. Refinements here refer to the delicate enjoyments. 那些精心安排的享受。Usually it means improvement. For example, the accuracy of the machine has been increased by a number of refinements. Here refinements means a number of improvements. Obviously, the initial proposal will need some refinement, which means it will need some kind of polishing. 还需要润色。To keep you occupied, to keep you busy, to help you to kill time. For example, he kept himself occupied with playing computer games during the journey. Or he is now fully occupied with writing his report, means he is now kept busy with writing his report. An unusual and breathtaking view of the world. Breathtaking means very impressive and exciting. For example, at the top of the hill, you will find that the view is breathtaking. 景色非常迷人. But you can also use breathtaking to describe something negative. For example, this is a man of breathtaking stupidity. 这个人愚蠢的惊人。You soar effortlessly. Soar means to rise very quickly and very high. For example, all night long fireworks soared into the sky. 礼花冲向天空。The temperature soared to 40 degrees. 温度一下上升到40度。Or we can also use soar to describe price. It was said that housing prices would soar by 20%. 据说房价要涨20%。The extraordinary sight of unbroken cloud plains. Unbroken means continuous, 连续的。Here it's used to describe cloud plains. You can also use it to describe something abstract. For example, the country has enjoyed years of unbroken prosperity. 连续的繁荣。The journey is so smooth. Smooth, when describing flight, means not shaking. 跟它相反的词就是 bumpy, 颠簸的。Of course, you can also use the word to describe the sea journey, meaning not rough. For example, we had a very smooth flight with no turbulence at all. 飞行非常顺利，没有颠簸。You can also use smooth to describe some running or operation. 顺利的。For example, a good transport system is important to the smooth running of a country's economy. 良好的交通系统对一个国家顺利的经济运行都很重要。So the author of our text prefers traveling by air. What do you think? Well, there's a condition, as he says at the beginning of the text. People who travel long distances will need to make a decision as to which transport to take. If you're only traveling for short distances, then aeroplanes might waste your time. 如果只是近距离的旅行，飞机反而会更费时间。It usually takes very long to get to the airport, to go through the check-in procedures, to go through security checks. And then you also need to take some time boarding, finding the right boarding gate, etc. Not to mention that sometimes flights can be cancelled or delayed. 同样的道理， 各个国家因为地理条件不同，所以选择的常用的交通工具也会有区别。For example, Britain is a small island, so it has a rather advanced public transport system. Trains and coaches are very convenient. By contrast, the United States is a large continent, so aeroplanes have to be a popular transport means. As a result, airfares can really be cheap sometimes even cheaper than train tickets. The other popular means of transport in the States, of course, is traveling by car. It's not rare even to see people driving from the East Coast to the West Coast. And along the highways, it's very convenient to find restaurants or motels or service stations. 所以呢，美国也会被称为 a country on wheels, 一个轮子上的国家。Okay, so much on the topic of traveling and transport. Bye for now.